The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah! Go Cowboys! This is Media Mash,
A roundtable of Cowboys insiders
dropping wisdom
and offering sizzling takes
on the current state of your Dallas Cowboys.
Now, your host,
Newy Scruggs.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Star in Frisco's SWBC podcast studio. This is the Media Mash, and we've got a fun show for you because it has been a busy day here in Frisco. Brian Schottenheimer, the head coach of the Cowboys, spoke to the media. We watched a little bit of practice today, and we got to go in the locker room. Nick Harris, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, joining me where I got the Hall of Famer Ed Werder, also over at WFAA TV. He is here with us. So I'll start with you, Ed. What was one of your takeaways from today?
Seemed like there was a lot of music, a lot of loud music throughout the course of practice. It's new under Shotty. None of it was on my playlist, by the way.
The Tupac?
Which comes as no
Come on, man.
surprise.
Come on. A little
Did they do
Tupac.
some artists who were still alive or no? Anyway,
there's a lot of Gunna.
from a football standpoint, it was interesting to hear how Brian Schottenheimer sort of forced conversation about last year's number one draft pick, Tyler Guyton, and the dedication he's made to the offseason.
I asked that question. I wanted to know.
Glad you did.
And then Guyton was available to us, and he spoke about some of the changes he made, and seems to be a guy who at least recognizes the situation that he's in, and the performance needs to be much better this year than it was last year.
Yeah, Tyler Smith spoke on it too, just from his perspective, how he's changed this offseason, whether it be diet or what Shotty spoke to, him being the first guy in the building whenever they got back this offseason. Tyler Smith spoke to that. He said they spent a lot of time together, those two, over the offseason. If you're spending time with Tyler Smith, you're probably on the right track.
Yes, agreed. And for me, and you guys can speak on this as well, the player has to recognize it and want to be better. To me, that's that. It all starts right there with your own SWOT analysis, looking at what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are your opportunities, what are your threats. And he decided to do that. And that, to me, is where the growth comes from. We saw it with Terrence Steele after his first season, where it was a rough rookie season. He ended up developing into a starter. Schottenheimer talked about Jalen Tolbert, who had a rough rookie year, came back and put in the work. And to me, we don't know where he'll be come July, but right now, these are the right steps to take. And if you look at Tyler Guyton's body, you can definitely tell he's been doing the work.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest question that this offense now has going into this year. I mean, you could say the running back spot, but that left tackle position, is it going to be reliable for you over 17 games? Whether that be Tyler Guyton, or if he doesn't pan out, Awesome Richards sliding in, whoever it may be, that's probably the biggest question I would have on this offense going deeper into the
Well, and they've made such a huge investment in the offensive line, both with some of the coaching hires that they've made this offseason, investing first-round picks and back-to-back years in the 5 offensive line spots. So
3 of 4.
I mean, these guys they've got to be good. I mean, Schottenheimer's talked about making a priority out of, controlling both lines of scrimmage. And in this division, that's of high importance.
Yes.
And, Tyler Smith said today that Schottenheimer came to him in the offseason before this all began and said, you guys are the guys who are going to decide whether we win or lose.
Well, the schedule, I mean, right out of the gate, you got the Eagles, but then you got the Giants. I mean, you have some serious good D lines that you're facing this year. You got the whole NFC,
AFC West.
AFC West.
NFC North.
Yeah, NFC North. So, I mean, you've got two, according to Pro Football Focus, the two toughest divisions this year.
Plus your own,
schedule.
which
Right.
contains a team that went to the NFC Championship game and a team that won the Super Bowl.
Right. And so, to me, I truly believe that we can talk all day long about George Pickens, but if it's look out Dak because the left tackle position is not taken care of, it's a problem. So to me, that was why I wanted to ask Brian Schottenheimer about the left tackle spot. And also, we were there when we saw Tyron Smith retire. For years, you were able to not worry about 77's got it. Last year was
As long as
a
he was
problem.
healthy, yeah.
Right. And it was a problem, and they needed to try and I wanted some answers. How do you fix this?
In Guyton's case, I think him recognizing that he did not meet expectations last year and that he has a potential to be much better is dedicated to working in that direction is really significant, because those are some of the questions people had about him when he was being drafted.
And I go back into the question I had asked him. So many people trusted Tyron Smith. You just trusted 77. How do you go about getting that trust? And he says, right now, I got to go earn it. So I'm liking what I'm hearing now. And it takes action. We can hear things all day long. the actions he takes, what he does to become that kind of player that he needs to be.
And he still has to be good enough in the end.
Yeah.
To block the most elite rushers in football. He's going to see a lot of them this year.
Availability is going to be big for him too. Not only during the season, but he missed a lot of camp last year.
I think that's the thing that irked McCarthy and the coaching staff the most about it was they got forced into a situation they didn't want to be in, which was because of injuries, they had to give him the job and rather than make him earn it.
Yeah.
And then he had a variety of ailments that kept him from the practice field way too often, whether they thought he should have been out there or not.
Yeah, and those are critical times for him. Coming into the league with only 14 starts, you expect to double that in your rookie year. I think he ended up with 13, but whether it be the knee or the illness that he dealt with, I think he battled an elbow or shoulder, at one point. A lot of times where you just wish his availability was a little bit stronger.
And then there were all the penalties. You know, he led the team in penalties last year, so he's got a lot to clean up.
Him and Laramie Tunzel can just hold up a penalty flag on Christmas together and for that trophy last year.
But Laramie Tunzel's at least proven it.
For sure.
Over time.
For sure.
I did like when Schottenheimer spoke to the fact that in so many ways, hey, the system we have now, the new offensive line coach, these coaches that he's working with, this fits him, which if you dive into it a little bit later, what wasn't a fit last year, potentially, but they seem to think that he is meshing with the coaches, and I'll be very interested to see where they go with that.
Well, Schottenheimer was here, so he witnessed it firsthand. Like, he should have a good sense of, how to coach this guy and what it's going to take and his willingness to be coached.
Yeah, and I don't want this comment to come off as me dumping on Mike Solari. It might anyway, but I think if you talk to a lot of these offensive linemen, they would tell you that they weren't pleased with their progression over the last 2 years. And especially as a rookie coming in, those are crucial times. And for Tyler Smith, that was something he was able to take into his own right. And I think he had natural ability that really helped and transitioned. And, working with the offensive staff obviously helped. But with a guy like Tyler Guyton, who came in a lot more raw, a lot more of a developmental project, that development with your offensive line coach is so important. And I don't think he got the best of the best when it came to that. So, in hiring an offensive staff from a Schottenheimer perspective, focusing on the offensive line, why not? You get a Clayton Adams who's an offensive line coach. You go and get a Big 12 offensive line guy who has been proven in that league in the past as well. That's a tough offensive line league as well. So getting those two guys in the building, helping with the development. There were things that this franchise maybe didn't help him do in year one, but now I think he has all the resources available to him. It's up to him now. And
that is, to me, a positive. That was one of the things I took away today. And like I said, it's all talk, but at least we've seen, you can look at the player and tell the player has put in the work from the physical standpoint. So he's doing that. But at least he's taking accountability. And that's the first step. Until you realize that, hey, I can be better. There are things I needed to do, off from there. There's some times where I wondered if we were getting that from Mazi Smith after his first season. Did he take accountability and what he could do? So he spoke today in the locker room. I did not get a chance to speak to Mazi. I was doing some other things.
Not many did. He was only available for about 45 seconds, and then he didn't want to talk about some certain things. He was like, all right, well, I guess we're out.
Really?
He does not look like he added weight. It could just be my poor eyes. I don't know, but it does not look like he added weight. He looks a little bit more toned rather than bulky.
I think the sense I got from talking to members of the previous staff, and they're now on their third, he's had 3 defensive staffs in 3 years, which doesn't make it any easier for him to have success. But talking to some of those people, they thought he could be an adequate player. They don't see him being an elite rusher for sure. They see him being maybe a successful 2-gap type player, but thought he's just hard to motivate, kind of lazy, slow moving around even, on the practice field. Like, those are not good tendencies to have for somebody who wants to succeed in what might be the hardest position to play in the NFL physically.
Can you think of any moment in Mazi Smith's career other than his introductory press conference where you were like, I love the body language? I think it was just the introductory press conference, and he had his mom next to him. I would do the same thing, Literally from that point on, they came in for media day when I was still working in the building, and he was just kind of walking from station to station. I'm like, his body language is weird. And then it just continuously got worse. And I think as he played bad and he did not show in year one that he could live up to that first-round billing, then you start to pair that body language with what the on-field production is giving you. I don't know. I haven't seen improvement from that aspect, and I think that has a lot to do with, what they're trying to build here from a culture perspective, from a, ego perspective. I don't feel like he's really built either of those things.
I was watching The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan Bulls documentary, and
curious to see where you're going here.
B.J. Armstrong was talking about Michael Jordan. He said, if you didn't love basketball, he could be tough on you. He said, you had to love it. And if you didn't, he was going to smoke you out and basically try and make your life Hades and get you on out the building. And when you look at Mazi Smith and you hear more things about him from people inside the building, there's a guy do you love this? Do you really love
And you better love it at that position.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot to like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thus,
I mean, he said it. I don't like football. I like hitting people.
Yeah.
Maybe we didn't put as much stock into that quote as we maybe should have.
And doesn't Schottenheimer, one of his things is passion, right? You have a
Exactly.
passion for the game. That's where it starts with him. That does not describe Mazi Smith. Not the one we've seen so far.
If I could look at the entire roster and be like, okay, who would be on call for that type of statement from Schottenheimer? Mazi's one. I can't think of anybody else who's in that same stratosphere where it's like, yeah, he needs to step up in that department too. It's Mazi. It's Mazi for sure.
and see, that'd be like the equivalent of telling Jordan, hey, man, I don't really love basketball. I like dunking on people.
Yeah.
And I hate playing defense and rebounding.
Yeah. No,
I just like putting on the shoes.
Yeah, I like dunking on them.
I want my own shoe.
And if you're going to have a culture shift and you're going to say these are the things I want, and you've got a player there that's not getting it done, that's going to be a challenge. And had you around when Bill Parcells had used a Tom Landry line, he said, by year 3, we got to see something.
This is year 3.
And this is year 3 of Mazi Smith. And then to me, this is what the Cowboys, all right, hey, we got to see something. Yeah. And if you don't see it, then he should not see year 4.
And they've drafted 2 players at that position in the 7th round, but they had them rated significantly higher than that. So his job's being threatened by that, you would think, right?
That's right, Ed. That's right, Ed.
Nick's the UCLA kid. Nick has all been on.
That's right, Ed.
I think
we face contention from Newy over here on that statement, I think.
No, look, the kid from UCLA.
Exactly.
The kid from UCLA. Hey, look, I am. This is the replacement under the Parcells line. We are in the replacement business. And so, you know what? Yeah, they should keep trying to replace Mazi Smith, because if you're not going to show that you want to be here, and if the attitude or the body language, Jim, is, hey, look.
And the production isn't there.
Right.
At all.
But it's year 3. It is year 3.
And what better way to make an example of a guy, when you're telling people it's all about competition and passion, and that's what you want, you exile a former first-round pick, that sends a message.
And look,
if he doesn't improve, if he doesn't earn it.
Right. And after year 3, I mean, look at Career Elam. You know, Buffalo say, hey, man, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to move on. And so if Mazi's not back for a year 4 and the Cowboys move on from him, there's no – the worst thing you can do is keep a guy knowing you made a mistake down the road. Jerry West had taught me that when he was GM of the Lakers. Like, hey, man, admit your mistake and move on. And obviously we got to get to training camp, but they're going to have a decision to make here. And if Brian Schottenheimer's not seeing what he needs to see, as far as those, if we're getting down the road in this process, if we don't see what we need to see, then you know what? Okay, let's see what happens. Now, Clarence Hill's of the opinion there's nobody on this team that's better than that's going to take his spot. You know, anybody that bring in. Well, we'll have to see, because at some point in time, if
you can't tell in drills like this
at all.
That's why I can't. July is going to be that time. But I would hope he realizes it's year 3, man. You got to show some people something. I know it's a third defensive coordinator, it's third different defense, but
that's 2 new chances to start over.
Yeah.
Which is to his benefit, in my opinion. And what have they talked about the last 2 years of McCarthy and this year? What have they talked about improving? Running the football and stopping the run. And they've talked about it for 3 years.
That's the thing with Jay Toya, that he's got the advantage because he comes in as a notorious run stopper. Last year in 12 games, he had 17 run stops. Mazi Smith in 17 games last year had 21. I know it's NFL, NCAA. There's a lot of different nuances that go into that, but he comes in as this 335-pound wagon, refrigerator right there in the middle to stop the run. I see him having an advantage on early downs. That's why I feel like he has a starting competition going into training camp. Mazi Smith does, because you have a guy who can play and be reliable there on early downs. And I did make a friendly little bet with Clarence Hill. So if that does happen, maybe we'll have to get him on the show to tell him what the bet was.
Well, the Cowboys got outrushed by 600 yards last year compared to what their opponents compiled.
Good.
And they got outscored upon rushing touchdowns 25-6. They allowed the most and scored the fewest. So
did they face the rushing leader in week 1 from last season.
The best rushing team in football, one of the best rushing teams in history.
Yep.
Yeah, they do.
Yep.
They do.
A team that ran the football more than anybody else by far.
And then Cam Scatterbo in week 2, baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Better watch out.
No, look, they have things that they've got to work on, and if they're going to be a better team, the left tackle position must be solidified. And if they're going to be a better team, they've got to figure out a way to stop the run. And so there are opportunities for the Cowboys, 2 previous first-round picks, to go out and show something. I think Guyton gets somewhat of a pass from the standpoint they did project he would be. This was going to take a minute, and they're right. Things that happen in training camp and whatnot. So he's at least trying to address that. But Mazi's got things he's got to answer. But it's year 3. We have got to see something here in year 3.
Absolutely. I'm with you.
I think from both guys.
Oh, you're right. But for Mazi, it's year 3. There's no excuse. I mean, for Guyton, you're sitting here, okay, you figured out these.
His career in Dallas hangs in the balance on what he does this season. Mazi Smith.
What's fascinating about Mazi is anytime we asked, whether it be Mike McCarthy last year, Mike Zimmer, or defensive line coach Jeff Scanina, I don't want to say it felt like excuses were being made for him, but there was always a reason why he wasn't playing to the standard. It's like, he dealt with the weight thing last year. This year, he's just learning the position. Well, you're going into year 3. You got to figure it out. They drafted you to be this impact player in the middle of the defense. You haven't been that, and I hope we don't get more excuses.
So here's what I'll say to this, what you just said. You have coaches, everybody's got. When does the player simply stand up and say, this isn't good enough, I'm better than this?
Guyton said it today.
Yeah.
And that was where I was going to go. You saw Guyton
saw accountability. Yeah.
You saw Jalen Tolbert stand up and say it. Terrence Steele stood up and said it.
And Mazi Smith had 45 seconds on the record today. I don't know. And there's a lot of people who they would rather show it than say it, and Mazi definitely gives off that vibe, but he hadn't shown it.
It's year 3. We got to see something. All right, we got to take a break right here, but more from today's happenings here over at the Star in Frisco. The OTAs are here. He's Nick Harris, Werder. I'm Newy Scruggs. This is the Media Mash on DallasCowboys.com.
How do you tell the world about all the great gifts in the Yeti store? Let her rip, Troy.
All right, folks, let's get started with the Yeti French Press. Enjoy coffee that stays hot for hours in a French press. 34 ounce for you, 6'4" for the cruise. The Yeti French Press. Next, waterproof bags. Bags waterproof. Submersible waterproof doubles. Waterproof bags. World's mostly water, so get a waterproof Yeti bag. Do I smell something cooking? Oh, new cast iron skillets made to be passed down like Mama's recipes. Take a steak, cornbread, cobbler's pot pie, and potatoes, and next level with 3 sizes of Yeti cast iron skillets.
Gear, gifts, and product experts. Visit the Yeti store on McKinney Street and at South Lake Town Square today.
How's Wingstop sound? Crispy, juicy classic wings, sauced and tossed in those 11 soul-satisfying flavors. Paired with hand-cut seasoned fries, house-made honey mustard, blue cheese, or signature Wingstop ranch. I think you've heard enough. Get your flavor delivered at wingstop.com.
This is Nate Newton from Hanging with the Boys, and Wingstop is here to bring the flavor to game day as the official wings of the Dallas Cowboys. Order now by downloading the Wingstop app or order it online at wingstop.com.
Hey, Cowboys fans, a 2024 football season is here, and SeatGeek is here to help you experience all the action. SeatGeek makes it easy to find tickets so you can be a part of all the touchdown celebrations this season. Whether you're buying or selling tickets to Cowboys football games or to any other live event, SeatGeek is the place to do it. SeatGeek is the official primary ticketing partner of the Dallas Cowboys. The most disruptive idea in ticketing? A ticket that works. Expect the expected. SeatGeek.
How about them Cowboys? Or how about them Tyson Cowboys Nuggets? As we cheer for the stars on the field, we love that we've also got some stars on our plate, thanks to Tyson brand star-shaped Cowboys Nuggets. They sure make game day special, and for every purchase of the new Tyson Cowboys Nuggets this holiday season, Tyson Foods will donate $1 to the Salvation Army up to $100,000. As you enjoy your stars on and off the plate, remember, tailgates and game day have always been Tyson.
Back to Media Mash.
Media Mash, sponsored by nobody. We're here at the Star in Frisco. Got Nick Harris, Fort Worth Star Telegram, Hall of Famer Ed Werder of WFA TV, and I am Newy Scruggs. Troy Aikman was over here the other. I missed his deal, but Troy was promoting his beer.
Sidecar Social.
Yeah, Sidecar Social. He's promoting his
He
beer.
was bartending again.
Something like that, man. And somebody asked me the question. I was like, man, I can't answer because I don't drink. How is the beer?
It's good. Yeah, I've helped him get it in one establishment out in Bartonville. Marty B's.
There you
he was
go.
barbecue tycoon out there.
Ed Warder, the beer marketing genius.
I help him, man.
Marty B's.
It's good. They have it at Cowboys Golf Club.
Somebody was mentioning Marty.
It's out in
B's.
Bartonville.
Okay.
Just outside of Lantana.
Okay.
It's
Yes.
a great venue for barbecue. They have live music out there on the weekends. It's quite a place.
I was in church.
It's a great venue.
Mentioned Marty B's. So
They have some religious functions out there early in the week, and then they raise hell on the weekend.
Okay.
That's how you do it.
So normally,
It's a Bible Belt for you.
Bounce.
if I get a beer, what I like to do is I get some. If I'm doing some hot dogs and brats, I like to soak them in beer. Just turn up a little bit, chop up an onion, and throw a little bay leaf in there. So I'll have to maybe get some 8 beer for that and get a little.
You should try it.
Cooking out
I
of
think
your
it's-
places.
I think it's excellent.
No pull though, right?
And the guy really cares about his product.
Yes.
Like he's not just putting his name on something at all. It's far from that.
So I'd asked Troy a couple of years ago. So Troy let us, talk to him, and I wondered what was the inspiration for this. But he said he did an internship in college at a beer distributor. So it got in his brain about that. So and Ed, from covering guys like Troy for so long, people just see him as one thing. But when you have conversations with him, man, this dude's got a bright mind. I remember for a while he had the car dealership. When I came here, Nick, the first I bought a Jeep. It was the old Troy Aikman Auto Mall, way out in Fort Worth. So I ended up doing that.
It's way out in Fort Worth.
Yeah, it was way out there in Fort Worth. But back then, Channel 5 was out there, so it wasn't that bad for me. So, but yeah, the old Troy Aikman Auto Mall. Then later on, he had a Ford dealership. So, but Troy's always been a guy that's just had a lot of different things he wanted to do. But the beer was one that was deep in his heart that he really wanted to pursue. So he's doing that. And then he spoke about Brian Schottenheimer, just saying, hey, it's way too early to. He said, I wish him luck. But how do we really know? And it's OTA. Right. So Troy being
he said something like, "There's every team in the league right now has nothing but optimism about what they're going to accomplish, and most of them are going to fail."
Hope. Yeah. You're right. And it's like the draft picks. Half of this class is not going to be good. It's just what it is. Half of these guys are just not going to work out here. But
he did also go on an ABC morning show.
Yes.
On television, and he picked the Cowboys to win the Super Bowl.
Yes, and then Strahan looked over and was just like, "Get out of here with that, Troy." So yes, but it made you. What did you do it in jest, or we just
It felt like it was in jest.
Yeah, like let me just do that.
Well, if you don't expect a lot and say as much publicly, then you can't criticize them when they fail to achieve. Galloway taught me that a long time ago.
He's the greatest.
Galloway would pick him. We're talking about the Super Bowl era, so Jerry was talking about the Super Bowl every training camp. That was the expectation, and he would say, "So what are you picking him, Werder?" I'm like, "I don't know, 11-5." He goes, 11-5? No, 13-3. And then we're in the break, and I go, "You really think they're going to win 13 games?" He goes, "No, but if I say they're going to be 13-3, I can criticize them when they win 12."
I said they underachieved.
You can only criticize them to 10.
17-0, baby.
Randy Galloway, one of the greats, learned a lot from Randy. Remember when Randy said, "You got to learn to deal with the idiots." But so Nick, you're a youngster.
I know about Randy.
But when Randy was doing his show, and the Cowboys were Super Bowl champs, Jimmy calls up and basically says, put in 3-inch bold letters, "We will win the game." And as a radio host, I don't know if you can get much better gold than that. Is the head coach
right before they play the 49ers in the championship game here?
Yes, which just set off. George was mad. The 49ers coach, man, Seifert was hot about that. It takes some big brass ones to say something like that. And
he said, "Well, he's got balls. We'll see tomorrow if they're brass or paper mache."
Yes,
they're brass.
Yes, he did. And it was like, Jimmy wrote the check. We got to go cash it. That's just.
And they got in a scuffle right before the game. Remember that? In the Kevin Smith, I think, got into it with somebody on maybe Jerry Rice.
I love hearing about winning.
I was gonna say, Nick, we're old enough. We covered Super Bowl teams.
It doesn't really seem like that long ago.
I could imagine.
Somebody mentioned St. Edwards to me yesterday. We had a conversation. Somebody mentioned being at St. Edwards for training camp. I was like, yeah. Back then, Nick, we could eat with the players.
Yeah.
At lunch.
Yeah.
You could have some great conversations.
Sit down, interview them over lunch. It was fantastic.
I mean, it was.
Jimmy would come over during practices and talk to us for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Different times.
It's a whole different NFL.
We could have a whole podcast about the differences between then and now.
Whole different NFL. But which leads me into this. So far, and it's early, but how would you grade what you've seen from Brian Schottenheimer so far?
on the field?
Everything.
I can't put a whole lot of stock into what we've seen on the field, just because it's going to be very vanilla from what we see versus what's actually going to be out there. And also, they're still building this thing. That was one of the questions I had in the press conference today is, how much is being put into a feedback perspective from the rest of the offense. And he had a good answer there. But all we can really put stock into is what he's done off the field, how they've constructed the roster, how he's put his staff together, how the culture has been built. And it's hard to criticize a lot of those things. I think, from a roster building standpoint, I think there are some red flags that, maybe aren't being dealt with as much urgency as I think maybe they should. I think about that defensive tackle spot. I think about corner. I think you could really use another veteran. Running back, yeah. I'm okay with the options at running back. And if it doesn't work out in camp, you can go get you one. And I know that's probably easy to say at defensive tackle or corner as well. But I do feel like they have a good mix there. Will it work? I don't know. And I could have the egg in my face. But I think with the options that they have right now at running back, I think they can go into camp and see what they got first.
I think he's made a favorable impression with the way he's spoken and the descriptions and the priorities, in putting the roster together. I like that he basically said today, go out there and watch us and watch the intensity with which we chase the ball. And I did that. And they did. When the ball's on one side of the field, 22 guys are on that side of the field when the play is over. Offensive guys are running down the length of the field to block. Defensive guys are chasing the football. But and there's been all this talk about culture and maybe it's different. Maybe it's better, but I didn't really think that was a problem here. McCarthy always talked about how great the locker room was. That was one of the best locker rooms he's ever had. The guy's been in the league for 20 years and coached the Super Bowl champion, went to playoffs every year. And he thought the culture was outstanding. Dak spoke to it the same way. Now maybe it's not a problem, but now it's better. That's possible.
What I think about there is the issues that they had defensively last year, specifically in those first 6 weeks where Jordan Phillips comes out and he's like, I don't know why I'm on IR, ask them. Or there was another defensive tackle. I want to say it may have been Jordan Phillips, actually. Yeah, Kelvin Joseph a couple of years ago. I think it was still Jordan Phillips being like, there's a lot of guys around this building who don't know their assignments on game day, and we can't have that, and there's no intention around that. Zeke's comments for sure, and I think
Jordan Lewis called everybody out about practicing the certain way.
100%. Dak as well, and maybe it was a situation where Schottenheimer looked at that from the 30,000-foot view and was like, yes, the culture was good. Our leaders, we had a good leadership council, we had a good core foundation, but that did not extend to all 53 or 70 if you're including practice squad. And I think you're probably seeing a little bit more buy-in from the bottom roster guys. And not to say that there weren't guys on the bottom of the roster that did not buy in, but I think you have an over-encompassing culture now with 90 guys rather than probably at this time last year, 65.
So Nick and I were there talking with Tyler Smith, and he spoke about how he really enjoyed the atmosphere that Brian Schottenheimer's bringing.
Yeah.
And then between Osa talking about the basketball, Ed, you were there when Guyton talked about.
I almost walked into the ping pong table because
I did the same.
I forgot that it was there.
I did the same thing. So,
but you know what? They talk about the ping pong table and all the attention it's gotten Schottenheimer. If Schottenheimer doesn't win, the next coach, the first thing he'll do to send a message, get rid of the ping pong table. Sure. Ping pong table's a problem.
I thought about that. What if they start 3-8? That ping pong table ain't gonna be in that locker room much longer. It is not gonna be in that locker room.
But ultimately, it comes down to talent and preparation and execution every week.
And going back into your point, the holes. They've got holes on here that you've got. How do you fill them? And you go back to the running back position, Nick. What you're saying here, in camp. What if we see injuries? What if you don't see what you need to see? Are you going to go make a move? We've seen the last two training camps that your run defense wasn't good. The wide receiving core after CeeDee Lamb was an issue, and they didn't fix it. So, with this schedule and the teams they've got, they could fix some of these things and still not be as good.
Right, they could be a better team and still not win 7 games this year.
Yes,
with that schedule.
Yes, this thing is tough right now. When I look at it, it's a challenge here. But so far from what I've seen of Brian Schottenheimer, I would say I feel like he's got a strategy. I feel like there's a strategy, and the buy-in he's getting from these players, and these players they're talking about what they like, and you never know. And I go back to one of the changes I saw is when TCU replaced Gary Patterson and they put in Sonny Dykes, and the players openly spoke about the differences and what they ended up playing for the national championship that year. So sometimes a change can be good, a different way of going about things. And obviously Shotty was around Pete Carroll, and we know the kind of teams that Pete Carroll had from USC and Seattle in the National Football League. They were about competing. Guys seemed to enjoy themselves and have fun, and I think that's what he's bringing here. So far, that's what
you can definitely see how he convinced Jerry and Steven to hire him and give him a head coaching opportunity. Sure. But the way he's up there and he talks about football with a passion and the insight that he has and the experience that he has, you can see how he talked him into this, that he was capable and deserving of the opportunity. And I think they backed that up for the most part with the way they've supported him this offseason in the draft and in being more active in free agency than they've been in previous years. But, yeah, they still have some holes on their roster.
They've supported him a lot more than they did McCarthy in the first couple of years.
And certainly in the last year.
Certainly in the last year. Certainly.
He was in the locker room today.
McCarthy?
Yeah.
Mike McCarthy?
No.
I was joking.
Shoddy? No, Shoddy. I'm sorry. No, Shoddy was in the locker room.
How's that allowed? What happened there?
I ran into him in the locker room. So, yeah. I mean, in Micah Parsons' comments about McCarthy last year, that was interesting as well.
Questioning his work ethic?
Well,
that's how it came across.
Yeah, Zach. Yeah, about Zach Martin. Just anyway,
feels bad for Zach Martin.
Yeah. So, I think there was some.
That guy's not been here much, by the way. Micah Parsons.
I'll say this. I get it. This is one I'll put on the team. This should have been taken care of.
But it never is.
And, yeah, you're right. So I don't blame him for not being here.
I wasn't placing blame. I'm just
saying, I don't blame him for not being here. This thing should be done. You want him. He wants – figure it out.
He already told you he'd play for less.
Right. Figure it out. That's
6 months ago he said he would.
Yeah.
That's one of those situations. I look at the team like, this doesn't make any sense. You want the player wants to be here. You're both good for each other. You got a new head coach. You got a new defensive coordinator. Man, get this done. Mainly for the coaches. Remember when Garrett was so adamant of, okay, man, I'm on a 1-year deal and I don't have my best football player here. He's out. Figure this thing out. Right.
That's how Zeke got the record contract, which was a horrible mistake, obviously. But that is why they signed Zeke and did all the things for his contract that they said they would never do for a running back. And it wound up being a disastrous decision for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is it cost him a chance to get Dak signed that year and Amari Cooper signed. But, yeah. And the other thing I thought of recently was, remember last year McCarthy talked about how he wanted his entire team. You have to have your entire team here in April to start the offseason program. And with the exception of Micah Parsons, they really have that this year. They haven't had it in past years.
Agreed.
Do you put any stock into Trayvon Diggs not being around here? Now, I know he would be with the rehab group, but we see all those rehab guys out there. Josh Butler, John Stevens, DeMarvion Overshone, Savone Ravel.
I don't know what conversations have gone into that. You would assume that he's spoken to the coaching staff and to Jerry and Steven and said, I think this is more important and I'm really trying to dedicate myself to my rehab this time.
Yeah.
You criticized me for not doing that last year and maybe justifiably so. And so now I really am committed and I can get my work done here better than I can there. Yeah. I'd like to stay here. And maybe they signed off on that. I don't know.
As long as he's not on a boat with his brother.
Yeah. Never saw him. Maybe he's holding the camera.
Hopefully not. That'd be the bigger scandal.
We're going to take a break on that. Media Man should be right back, right here on DallasCowboys.com.
Star Sports Tours is the only official fan travel partner of the Dallas Cowboys, offering exclusive game weekend travel packages with pregame sideline access and photo ops with current players, cheerleaders, and Cowboy legends. You want to stay at a team hotel, attend the best tailgate party in Texas, tour the Star, and talk X's and O's with me, Everson Walls? With Star Sports Tours, you can. Visit CowboysTravel.com to book your travel package today.
Hey Cowboy fans, I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. But lately, I've been learning a new game, crypto. Sound confusing? Don't worry, even us pros were rookies in crypto once. That's why I trust Blockchain.com. They make crypto easy. No confusing jargon, just the tools to help you win.
Prescott keeps it, slides with a first down.
Invest like your icons, where everyone is a rookie in crypto with Blockchain.com.
Perfect throw, my goodness. Wow, did he ever thread the needle.
Visit Blockchain.com/Cowboys to get started.
Star Sports Tours is the only official fan travel partner of the Dallas Cowboys, offering exclusive game weekend travel packages with pregame sideline access and photo ops with current players, cheerleaders, and Cowboy legends. You want to stay at a team hotel, attend the best tailgate party in Texas, tour the Star, and talk X's and O's with me, Everson Walls. With Star Sports Tours, you can. Visit cowboystravel.com to book your travel package today.
Cowboys football and Miller Lite. What a pairing. Can cracks at kickoff. Tailgates going way past postgame. Sunday night overtimes followed by Monday morning swagger. Brisket in the smoker. Miller Lite in the cooler. America's team playing America's greatest sport. Miller Lite, the only beer of the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys football tastes like Miller time. Celebrate responsibly. 2023 Miller Brewing Company, Fort Worth, Texas.
Back to Media Mash.
Media Mash, Nick Harris, Ed Werder. I am Newy Scruggs. Hopefully Jack Taylor's with us next week. Jack, rooting for you.
Rooting for you.
Rooting for you, man. I want to see you back, man. I want to see you.
I'm permanent on the show now, and he stopped showing up. Is he holding out? We can have a discussion.
He's doing some reporting on Diggs in his absence.
Joe Milton was in the locker room and very active today here. He was running second team reps versus Will Grier. What do you make of that, Ed?
I don't think there's a lot to be made of that right now at this point in time, but if he's doing that at training camp the week before the season starts, it'll be significant. I mean, I think they like Grier, but he's got more experience. They've made an investment certainly in Milton, has a lot of upside. And I saw him do a backflip before practice even started today.
Nice. It's tough to do at 6'5" or whatever.
Big kid, man.
Big kid.
It'll be, I think it creates an interesting preseason competition between those two quarterbacks. They're probably not going to play Dak at all anyway. Last year, they gave Lance all the reps to evaluate him. So I think it'll be interesting to see how those two perform in the preseason game.
I think it would help to get Dak in the first team at least one drive per game. Just get him out there, get him comfortable. Pickens out there, live balls on air. Instead of it being balls on air, it's live competition. I think it would help, but if we're looking into the preseason, I think Milton has a pretty good advantage there. I mean, look at the reps here today. Just charting from today: 10 snaps for Milton, 3 for Grier. So I think there is probably a clear distinction there, but I thought Milton looked a lot better today than what we saw from him last week. Now, talking to people in the building last week, the media session that we saw was kind of an outlier compared to how he has performed early on. They've really liked what he's done and how he's taken some intention in the meeting rooms. But today, 7 for 8. He had a couple of throws that made everyone kind of look around like, oh, okay. There was one about 40 yards downfield to Ryan Flanoy that caught my eye. Then he had another one that was kind of on the run across the middle of the field, across his body to Trayshawn Holden for roughly 20 yards. But other than that, there was a lot of quick game stuff today with both first and second team. But Milton is Milton. It's going to be fun to watch his progression, and you're not expecting him to start anytime soon unless there's an injury involved to Dak. But you hope to see progression and development, and this is a fun place to start with that. I think a better place than where Trey Lance was when he got here.
I was interested watching practice just how many balls get thrown to the running backs.
Yeah, there was a lot of quick game.
I think that's going to be a huge part of Schottenheimer's offense. And he's got backs who have that capacity with Javonte Williams, Blue.
Yep. Thank you. That was exactly where I was going to go. You've got the kind of guys that, hey, if they can make the first guy miss, they're going to be able to get out there in some space. And they
come on, Deuce Vaughn.
So
come on. You got to root for the kid, man. I can't say kid. He's
Emo.
I did think
25.
in general, watching practice, there were a lot of receivers on the ground catching balls.
Yeah,
not good.
Yeah, especially
not good for
Milton,
Yak.
Especially for Milton. Yeah.
They've got to, and some of them were unnecessary in my opinion. Watching them, like the receivers going to the ground to make sure he makes the catch. Like you got to be sure you're going to catch the ball, and then you got to run for 15 yards after that. That's got to be the goal, and the quarterback has to be accurate enough to hit the guy on the move.
Yeah.
Jake Ferguson was catching a couple balls out there today, and there's one player when I think of a bounce back player. They need Jake Ferguson to have a bounce back season, because if CeeDee Lamb's getting doubled, George Pickens is getting one-on-one coverage. I mean, Jake Ferguson should, and he's a free agent here, he should have a good season.
Yeah, and that was a question that I had today, loaded up for Shoddy, but they cut the press conference a little short. And it's probably something I'll ask on Tuesday. Is you've gone back and you've looked at all the cuts from the past season. You've evaluated all these players individually. What did you see from Jake Ferguson to where he could be better? Where did he fall short last year? Was it an injury thing where that knee sprain in week 1 bothered him a lot more than we anticipated, or the concussion late in the season, whatever it may be? You would hope that Jake Ferguson has a better year with a healthy Dak and him healthy as well. If 700 yards is not accomplished, then it's probably underachieving for Jake Ferguson.
Well, Dak throughout his career has been a quarterback who really relies on the tight ends, right? Like, I think there was some stat like only Patrick Mahomes, who has Kelsey, throws the ball more frequently to his tight end than Dak has done. And Dak really needs that threat in the red zone. They were horrible in the red zone last year. They led the NFL in turning the football over in the red zone. He's got to trust him, and he's got to win one-on-one and come up with the big catches when there are points to be scored.
Look, he's got an opportunity to eat. He's going to be a free agent, and yeah, this is an opportunity for him. And I just think about when people talk about how's this team going to get better. Well, a player like Jake Ferguson, you need to play up to the level.
Right.
And last year he dipped down. And I know some people thought he was going to take another step up. He did not. Took a regression. So he's got to go back to being the guy he was 2 years ago. And if he is, then this football team's going to be in a better place. But from a standpoint of having Lamb, Pickens out there, I need to see.
You would hope it was more a function of inconsistency of who they had at quarterback from week to week, and his own injury situation that caused his performance to plummet.
The overall tight end room, not necessarily a red flag, but a bright yellow one, very subtly, is that tight end position. Because let's say Jake Ferguson doesn't make that step forward, and he's consistent with where he was last year. Schoonmaker had a bad drop today. He has not lived up to a second-round billing, and the depth of that room hasn't stayed healthy over the course of the last couple of years. You brought in a lot of undrafted guys, but how much of those would you rely upon in game situations? Brevin Spanford is the guy I've looked at in these OTA sessions, and man, he looks good. Other than that, it's like, okay, you haven't seen a whole lot from Jake. Yeah, they had some quick game action to him today.
John Stevens?
John Stevens is still recovering from the torn ACL. He was with the rehab group today, and he's coming off back-to-back torn ACLs now. Can he get on the field, much less stay on the field? And then you're talking about guys like Princeton Fant and Rivaldo Fairweather. We're talking trivia questions now. So I don't know. I think there's some concern maybe with the tight end room if they do not step up early in the season and provide for Dak Prescott. Because like you said, he relies on that tight end position. If he can't rely upon it early on, is that something that they maybe need to go acquire midseason?
They could have drafted a guy in the first round who can play.
Definitely could have.
Well,
definitely could have.
I also
that would have been fascinating. That would have been fascinating.
I think of this from the standpoint of June 1st is coming up.
That's
guys
very
are going to
fair.
get cut.
Yep. June 1st is coming around here. So what could potentially be out there on the marketplace? And
there's some fascinating guys on the trade block too.
At tight end?
Mm-hmm. There's a couple of guys. I don't think we can say these on this air, right, Beam?
Why?
Please don't.
Okay, cool. Cool. I was making sure. I was double checking. I didn't know if those rules applied to all shows.
I didn't know there were any rules.
Yes, there are.
Really?
There are rules here.
Wow, I better check.
I went over my head for a second.
Brian Schottenheimer wants to run the football. If you want to run the football, you know what? You need to have a blocking tight end. And right now, there's no one here known for that in terms of and having proven it in the NFL that you could say, I trust. Trust requires three things: time, proof, and consistency. They do not have a tight end right now who you could trust and say is a blocking tight end. You don't have that.
I think Brevin Spanford you could trust in those blocking situations. That's how he carved a roster role last year.
Time, proof, and consistency to do it.
I got you.
That thing to say, hey, look, proven player in games, that thing, like we've got that. They don't have that. You got a potential, right there, potential, but a guy that you can say, hey, boom, this is his calling card. We've seen him do it here in games. That hasn't happened yet. And one that, Schottenheimer's been able to sit up here and say, okay, I know what this guy can do. And Bill Parcells, Bill was always trying to bring it in. So, I mean,
that was his favorite position of
right,
the linebacker.
Right. We drafted one guy, we're going to do it next year. So, he was just always trying to find Mark Bravaro part 2. So here's Jason Witten. You're good. No, then he drafted the dude from Notre Dame. Like, we just had another guy. Then next thing you know, they bring in Martell Smith. I mean, there's always bringing in. Yeah. In tight ends. And so, but he was looking, you got to be able to block for him. He wanted that. And so I'm just assuming if I'm going to believe what Brian Schottenheimer is talking about and running the football, you're going to have a complimentary tight end. And if your left tackle position is an issue,
yeah.
You're going to need a blocking tight end, which is why I say, post June 1st, man, I think if I'm Will McClay,
we're getting there. It's only a couple days away.
There was a point in the season last year, I think it was probably November, December. There was a coach on this coaching staff that had said that Hunter Lipke is playing like the tight end 2 on this roster right now. And that's how bad the position group had gotten, whether it be from injuries, not stepping up and playing to the billing. That's more of an indictment on Schoonmaker. Brevin Spanford, I thought he had good moments last year, especially down the stretch. And that was before Schoonmaker really had that bounce back at the end of the year last year. But if there's any point in the season where you're saying your fullback at 6 foot whatever, maybe 6 foot probably flat is your tight end 2, that's an issue. That's an issue.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Newy. I have to stop. I can't work in this zoo. There's a group passing by, a tour group passing by, and I can't.
They're banging on the windows.
I can't.
Just go,
zombies.
Go down to Houston with their tight end. Maybe you don't have to worry about it. You know?
See, they had a good tight end then.
Yeah. So there you go.
We love the people around here.
You know what, guys? It's a perfect place to end the show. How about that?
Let's do it.
Hall of Famer Ed Werder, thank you. Rising star, future Hall of Famer Nick Harris.
appreciate it.
Thank you very
so
much. I'm merely Newy Scruggs.
Merely.
Media Mash.
That's back.
DallasCowboys.com.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!